So I will call this meeting of the Washoe County School District Board Policy Committee to order. And we will start with our board clerk is out of town. We're going to start with a roll call from the vice president.
Jeff Church.
Here. Do I have something else?
Adam Mayberry.
Here.
Ellen Minetto absent. Diane Nicolette here. Joe Rodriguez.
Here.
Beth Smith.
Here.
Angela Taylor.
I'm here.
All righty, we have a quorum.
Okay, we do have a quorum. Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to jump right into the agenda. We're looking, excuse me, at agenda item 2.01, approval of minutes for of the November 16th, 2021 Board Policy Committee meeting. And this is for possible action. If there's any comments or anything like that from the board, then, or otherwise, we're looking for a motion if that is the pleasure of the board.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second,
Okay, it's moved by trustee Church, seconded by Vice President Nicolette. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? All right, the most, oh, I'm sorry, I have to wait for trustee Smith, who's on Zoom. My mistake. My apologies, trustee Smith. Okay, let the record show that was an aye. Let the record show that it is unanimous, which is 6-0 today. Okay, we're going to go on similar agenda item. This time we're looking for the approval of the minutes from the December 14th Board Policy Committee meeting. Looking for the pleasure of the board.
so moved.
Moved by Vice President Nicolette. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Rodriguez. Seeing no discussion, I don't see any public comment. So all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? All right, the motion is carried. Let the record show is unanimous, 6-0. All right, thank you, thank you. Now we're going to move on into our policies to review. This is agenda item 2.03, discussion and possible action to recommend revisions to and or forward the proposed revisions of, this is board policy 5310, student voice, specifically to update formatting and clarify language to a future regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for consideration of preliminary approval. And as staff gets into position, just as a reminder, this is where we're sitting as the Board Policy Committee. So any changes we make, any policies that we approve, change or otherwise here will go on to be considered by the full Board of Trustees at an upcoming meeting of the board. Okay. Before us, we see our esteemed staff.
President Taylor, Superintendent McNeil, fellow members of the Board of Trustees, Joe Ernst, Chief Accountability Officer, and also here today with Dr. Davidson, who is our Director of Research and Evaluation. And we are going to talk with you a little bit about student voice, policy 5310.
Okay, for the record, Laura Davidson, Director of Research and Evaluation. So today we're talking about 5310, and then later in the agenda, we're going to be talking about a related one, 5350. But the purpose of this policy is to ensure that our students are heard, valued, and engaged members of district decision-making, as well as school-level decision-making. So for this policy, we're not offering any substantive content changes. It's all formatting, largely cosmetic. The only changes that were brought up by our Student Advisory Council, who of course helped us edit this round of this policy, is the addition of school into the policy 2 section to ensure that we do acknowledge that students should be incorporated into school level decision-making and school improvement processes, as well as district decision-making processes. So just a minor wording change there.
I'm sorry, Dr. Davidson. Everybody follow where that addition is? Okay, I see some nods. Okay, trustee Church, you're good. I don't see a nod.
I'm okay with it.
You're right. Okay.
And then in section 4C, we are proposing voting rights. Students have voting rights on committees as well as the board. We acknowledge that might not be possible for all board processes, but certainly for committees, we know students are always well represented on all district level committees and should have voting rights. So we just wanted to ensure that that's acknowledged in the policy, that is best practice, that students are equal members of our committees, at least for ensuring that students have equal platforms with adults for this policy. And then just a minor background for this policy. It was developed in collaboration with our Student Advisory Council. So I think that's a perfect example of how students can be involved in large-scale district decision-making and policies. I'm sure many of you have worked with our Student Advisory Council, and just having worked with the superintendent search, we already have 34 applicants for that process. So I think students are excited to engage in these district decision-making processes. And if any of you have worked with them, you know they're all going to be our future bosses. So so great to involve them now, that's for sure. But we have lots of great accomplishments from leveraging student voice and ensuring that we have student voice in all our decision making. So I think this policy is really innovative. Not many districts have a student voice board policy. So it's really innovative that our district has one, and I think speaks to how much this board and the entire district supports inclusion of student voice in all of our important decision-making processes.
Okay. Looks like just really no major changes as Dr. Davidson indicated, but looking for, first of all, do we have any public comment on this? Jeannie, let's go here.
Yes,
Okay,
John Eppolito.
welcome, Mr. Eppolito.
Hi, my name is John Eppolito. I have 2 kids left in the district and I'm with Protect Nevada Children. I know most of you weren't here. Angie, you were, and Kristen, you were, at the school board meeting in Galena, at the Galena High School, when the students were adamantly demanding that teachers be able to show their support for BLM and LGBTQ in their classrooms. It was terrible. It was terrible. I don't remember if Angie was the president then or the former president. Some people said the same exact thing twice and it was allowed. I think the board should focus on educating children, students. I have 2 kids left in high school. I'm glad I don't have any at Incline Elementary or Incline Middle. The principal at Incline Elementary, people have been complaining to me about him, so I'm sure they've been complaining to you about him. And the same with the middle school. It's, how do you say, well, what I just said, BLM and LGBTQ is okay at the school, but the conservative voice or the other side is not okay at those 2 schools, the elementary or the middle school. The high school is different, which is where my kids are. So that's why I haven't been complaining personally. I know she's pretty far left, so is my wife, but she doesn't let that dictate how she treats the children. And unfortunately, I do think that is what's happening at the elementary and middle school in Incline. I would much rather see this board focusing on improving education than all this fluff, SEL, what's all this stuff you guys have? SEL, comprehensive sex ed, social justice.
Mr. Eppolito, if you can stay on student voice, that would be great.
That's what I'm trying to stay on, Angie, and you always interrupt people. And it's getting very old. Students should be educated, not indoctrinated. How's that? Student voice, I saw those kids at the high school in Galena, and you saw it too. You were okay with it. You were trying to get the attorney to figure out how to allow BLM and LGBTQ, but not the other side. I have the video. It's public video. Educate the kids, don't indoctrinate them.
Thank you, Mr. Eppolito. Do we have any other public comment, Jeannie?
That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll bring it back here for comments, trustee Church.
Thank you. I do have a few comments.
Okay.
On that 4C,
Hang on, let's follow. Can you give us a page so we can follow you?
the, what was just commented about the student having,
On page 3,
it's 4C. I'm not positive of the page. You find it yet?
4C, yes.
Students will be given the opportunities for engagement, involvement as voting members of the Board of Trustees. I got a problem there. And district committees. So can somebody explain to me, for example, just picking one at random, the school naming committee, do we have to put a student on there? And do they get to vote? I'm not comfortable with that if that's the intent. So I'd like a little clarification, and we might need to clarify the wording.
Well, I can just say this, trustee Church, I don't know where there's board representation on district committees. I mean, that might be, is that more of your question?
No, that the students would be on our board of trustees as voting members.
No, it says voting members of board and district committees. Those are committees of board and district committees. You see that? It's not the board of trustees.
Let me go back. I cut and pasted wrong then.
If I may,
Please. Vice
I
President?
had the same question just because on page 1 in purpose, and we've made this very consistent, which I know is a good idea. The Board of Trustees in parentheses, board is committed.
Mhm.
So I scratched my head a little bit on that one too, when it says voting members of board. Now trustees is crossed out, but I did wonder how that would be interpreted.
My understanding is that it's board committees, the board we have, and district committees. That's my understanding, not the, and maybe it needs to be stated more clearly.
I think
that's
so,
the
but
case-
even if we state it more clearly, are we mandating that students say, I picked one at random, the
Oh,
school
that's okay.
naming committee, or we've got the capital projects committee. I mean, we have roughly 13 committees. I mean, they're eligible to apply like everybody else, but I don't want to create some appearance that they have a right to be on those committees and a right to vote on those committees.
Okay, first of all, why don't we do a couple of things? First of all, let's see what it says, what the intention of what it says is, and it's not to lose your point, trustee Church, but let's clarify that piece first. And then we can go to, this is what it says or what it means, and is that what we want? Because that's what you're trying to get to, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so why don't we take one at a time? Dr. Davidson?
Sure. So it says students will be given opportunities for engagement as voting members of board and district committees, not that they absolutely, every single committee have to be represented and have to be voting members. We're just clarifying the language here that gives that opening so that if some committees do want to have students represented and have equal votes in decision of naming or whatever the committee is, that they have an option to do that. Whereas before there wasn't language around that, so there wasn't even the opportunity for students to do that if the committee decides they'd like to. And yes, it's crossed out that they're voting members of the Board of Trustees. So they wouldn't be, Victoria would not be our voting member necessarily, just there to provide opinion and ask all the great questions that we know she usually does.
Well, in this, just to clarify on that, this doesn't even say the Board of Trustees. This says board and district committees. So it still doesn't say that they get a vote on the Board of Trustees, because we would be in complete violation of that, because she doesn't get a voice, no, her, because she's a her now, but we've had great students and they get really good input and we love to hear from them. But this doesn't even say they should get a vote on the Board of Trustees, or they may get a vote, or shall, or this does not include the Board of Trustees at all in my reading, unless I'm reading it incorrectly. I think that's an important distinction.
You are reading that correctly, not on the Board of Trustees, but board committees and district committees. So if we have a calendar committee, a bell schedule committee,
Or
any of
school
the
naming or whatever.
school
as trustee
naming,
Church
any
said.
of those types of committees, it's just giving the option that students could vote on them if that's what the committee decides they want to do.
Okay, so so it's really clear, it's not on the Board of Trustees. So let's get that clear. Students are not getting, shall not, will not, they're not members of the board. We have the representatives, but they do not get votes. So that clarifies number one. Okay, the intention is to say they may have a spot, if you will, on board committees and district committees, not that they shall or that they may. So Church, I see your light on, but I see there's a suggestion for a change. Maybe if it's changed, students may be given, that makes it very, very clear that it's not that they will get on every committee or whatever, but committees can have the flexibility, just as you said.
We'd be great with that change.
How does
Makes
that, trustee
sense.
Church?
I also would, I'm still gonna have to look at the whole thing, but they're either voting members or they're not. Let's just take out the word voting, because if you're a member of a committee, then you're a member of committee. And I might even like the word, well, let me give you an example. Here's what flusters me. The capital projects committee and probably many of our other committees are share committee. Those were established by law, if I understand. And I see Mr. Roberto looking up. I've got his attention. Some of those were established by Nevada revised statute on who will be on there.
Mhm.
They're not eligible, to the best of my knowledge, to be on the capital funding. because that's essentially made up of elected people from the community and some other appointees. So,
It's prescribed.
pardon?
It's prescribed, yes.
Yes, and I like to share. So I just want to be careful how we word this. And I know you like to say, well, give me an example, but we really need to walk the dog on this, on being careful on the wording.
So any input in terms of how that deals with what's required statutorily, council?
Well, I think that's why we would put the word may, because if it's required statutorily, then they don't get that opportunity. So they may be given the opportunity. And it's therefore inferred, you may not. And then to clarify on committees, I dropped the word board committees in there. So my changes aren't red. And I will say the initial reading of the statute, or excuse me, of this policy, when I read it the first time, I have to say that I was like, well, they can't be voting members of the board because it's only elected officials. And then I reread it and realized, no, this is what they meant was board and district committees, board committees, district committees. So I just think we put the word in there, voting members of board committees and district committees. But back to the statutory question, if the statute, for example, share says you have to have these type of people and you have to have 5 parents and you have to have a therapist, and I can't remember all the criteria, well, then they don't get that opportunity. That's why it's a may. So you may have the opportunity, you may not, and you don't need to put or may not. It's inferred in the word may.
Okay, so it looks like what we have is what council has put on the board. You know, he kind of makes suggested changes along the way based upon our discussion. So if you can see that, we can all take a look, and what it shows is it changes the will to may at the beginning, and that way it makes it really, really clear that there's no requirement that students sit on every committee. Additionally, thank you. It looks like it needs to be a little larger for some of us.
Well,
I don't want to mention Trustee Church, but I see him looking around. He's making it as large as he can. I need it too. You see me looking right here. I need it too. So, all right, thank you. You're right, huh? Okay, so we can see that the recommended change based upon this discussion is that it goes from will to may, and that way makes it, these are really clarifications. It makes it really clear that there's no requirement for that, which is one concern that was voiced, as well as adding the word board committees to make sure it's really clear that it isn't on the board. It's board committees and district committees. And again, it is a may. So those are the two, they're kind of connected because we've discussed them together. So those are the recommended change. Trustee Church, you had a light on?
Is there any reason we cannot take the word voting out? Because in some cases, maybe they would want them as a advisory, non-voting, and in other cases, it's just understood by the nature of the committee.
My personal response is, I think in some cases is the students are there because they get a vote. You know, quite honestly, but I do also think it doesn't prohibit the committee, whomever's running the committee and so on, and say we want a student from an advisory standpoint. But part of student voice certainly is to give them voice. But I don't want to say that they never ever get a vote, because there may be times when that might be appropriate. So that's just one trustee's view in terms of giving the students an opportunity to be involved. But
If we
certainly,
take out voting, it doesn't imply they can't. It just leaves it kind of to the nature of the committee.
other comment, Dr. Nicolette? And
I
CSC
hear
President?
where you're coming from, and I had originally had that concern or question too. And I believe, I know that with the change to May, I think that's very, that's workable. And I also think that it sends a supportive message to our students. And then, you know, each committee has their own little bylaws and charges and things, and they can work with that within their committee. So I like how it reads right now.
Based upon these recommended changes here.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Other comments, feedback? If not, we're looking for a motion.
Yeah, I
on
have
the floor.
I have other comments on other sections.
Okay, we're going to take a section at a time. Okay. Other than this section, Trustee Mayberry?
Thank you, Madam President. Rookie question. My apologies. I probably should have asked this earlier. So can you just, as somebody that's new here, the Student Advisory Council, Can you just give me a quick summary of that? I mean, I'm assuming that high schools have their student councils, right? You have your student body president. Yeah. But then is this a district-wide advisory group of students that the superintendent handpicks? Is that my understanding?
Yeah, so for the record, Laura Davidson, and we're actually, our last policy of the day is specifically around student advisory council. So you're going to get a lot more around that. But basically, it's each high school sends between 1 to 5 students to us, usually recommended by the principal. And then we also recruit in other ways to ensure that we have representation, not beyond just leadership. And that group is a group that helps to advise lots of district decision-making. So they also design district events, like we do a student voice conference every year, and that is the planning group for that. So they represent each of our middle and high. They can be on if they're a middle school member. It's largely comprised of high school members, and they help with policy design. They help with district decision-making, different departments, and bring them in to help weigh in on decisions that they're making. But yeah, more to come on that when we get to the final policy of the day here.
No, that was a good question to fill in. We have to remember we have new trustees. And so that's good. It's good to know. Just on this piece right here, seeing no other comments, and we've already taken public comment on this, looking for a motion on the change to C, is it 2C? 4C, 4C on page 3. Looking for a motion if that's the pleasure of the board.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Rodriguez that the board adopts the changes as discussed to subsection 4C. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Nicolette. Further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Got the aye. I see you. I caught myself. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries. It's unanimous, 6-1. Trustee Church, you had other comments, questions, you said?
6-0.
6-0, what'd I say?
6-1.
Oh, 6-0, I'm sorry. Thank you. Go ahead, trustee Church.
So my next, I have a number of comments, please, but my first question, I'm always concerned about how many policies we have. And has there been any discussion or thought about consolidating this? First of all, you have board policy 5150, student free speech. Then we have the one we're going to talk about later today. There's probably some others I'm not thinking of. And we have student voice. So student speech, student voice, and then student, the one that we're talking about later. So I just want to throw that out to see if there's any discussion on that.
Okay, seeing none.
Seeing none.
Next comment, sir.
Seeing none, moving along. Let me pull my notes up. Under, and I'm having a hard time finding this, but subsection I, and I'll try and find it for you. The district shall maintain a student voice department. And
Can you help us find where that is?
Yeah, let me try to,
Oh, DI, I see, I see. So it's 4D, new D, I, little I. Page 3. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go, will you start again, please, sir?
certainly I'm on the wrong, I got mixed up here. All right, on that, I just have a concern about shall, if we ever decide, budget, whatever, wouldn't it maybe be better to have the word may? And then the same thing for double I, shall to may. So I'd like to maybe throw that out.
Looking.
And I might, and I don't even know, what is a department by definition? I mean, is that something that's costs us a lot of money where we have a department head?
Well, a couple things. We'll go to shall first, right? And shall is it directive, council is shall, or is it must is what's directive?
Yeah,
So we can take care of the first part of that.
It's
concern.
mandatory.
Shall is mandatory. Okay, so it is, okay. Okay, so superintendent, you want to just, or someone take the department, what's your question around department, please, trustee Church? Go that again, please, sir.
Well, both of the two, the I and double I, that we would, I don't even know what a student voice department is. I mean, do we have one? Is it, how much does it cost us? What's the staff,
So this-
Say shall.
Keep your mic on.
If we're gonna say.
No, keep your mic on. Okay, there we go.
If we're gonna say shall, yeah, I'm very concerned about maybe knowing what we're showing.
So the Student Voice Department sits under the Office of Accountability, so it sits under Mr. Ernst. And Dr. Davidson supervises our Student Voice Department. We have one coordinator out of Student Voice. And then the Student Voice Coordinator oversees the running of the Student Advisory Council.
Okay. Think that answers-
I would like to see May.
Questions, concerns? I'm comfortable with shall, but I think student voice is really important. It doesn't, we don't expend a lot of dollars there. It's a part of the overall effort in our student engagement, and this is what we're here for. That's as one trustee, I'm comfortable with shall. And I do think if there is, because sometimes things do happen and you have to make budget cuts and changes and so on. And I think in any time when that's the case, and we know that some of those things that we like to have that we shall have, we're gonna have to go back and take a look at along the way, but this certainly doesn't close the door to that. Hopefully we won't get there, but things happen, right? And sometimes things have to be changed. That's again, one trustee. I jumped in because no one else did, but certainly open for other comments.
Dr. Taylor,
Oh, please.
if I may, Joe Ernst, Chief
Please, Mr.
Accountability Officer for the record. We do also like shall because we think that as an educational institution, it shows our commitment to students and valuing them in the process. And so we too would concur with what you had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Ernst. Let's see, I see other trustees looking and reading. Other comments, is that, if there's nothing else, we're looking for a motion to that regard. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next point. And part of my job is keep us moving this year. I'm seeing that trustee Church, is that
I'm ready to move on to the next point.
okay?
Section 3 at the bottom. So that would be,
Page 4, right at the top of page 4.
yes,
A 3 or three little eyes, I'm sorry.
no, number 3.
The number 3.
Um,
I'm sorry, I don't know where that is, and I'm sorry.
the board policy compliance aligns with federal laws and regulations.
Oh, all the way at the bottom. Okay, yes,
Yes.
sir. Okay, got it. Everyone see it, it's towards the bottom of page 4. Go ahead, trustee Church.
And this is very minor, but again, I throw these out to see if they stick. No Child Left Behind Act, that might be changed, and we're stuck with it in the policy. I would just maybe suggest adding a couple of words, or any subsequent acts, or any subsequent regulations, but acts, any subsequent acts.
Council, because they kind of guide us through that as laws are changed and so on, council.
Yeah, so this isn't really, these changes are part of a format change. And if you read the policy on policies, this can be changed at any time to make sure that we're in compliance. So this isn't, although you're voting on it today, this isn't really a voting portion of it. This can be changed without coming back to the board because this is just legal requirements and associated documents. It's really a reference tool for us in the legal office, other attorneys, parents, employees, folks, folks that might want to know where the policy is coming from. So, I mean, you can add that in, it doesn't bother us, but this is really not a substantive part of the policy. So if we move, as things get renumbered, we'll change the numbers. We don't need to come back here to change these parts. And that's written in your other policy.
Okay. Other comments or anyone? Okay, seeing none, then looking for a motion to approve this policy as changed. Remember, we changed the first piece of this. Looking for a motion if that's the pleasure of the board.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Nicolette. There's a motion on the floor to approve board policy. This is our first one, board policy 5310, student voice as changed. Is there a second? Seconded by trustee Mayberry. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
I'm going to be a nay.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries 5-1. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you, staff. We're going to move on to agenda item 2.04. Discussion and possible action to recommend revisions to and or for the proposed revisions of board policy 5325. This is district recognized athletics, specifically to update the formatting, clarify language, and reflect current practice to a future meeting of the board, to a future regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for consideration. And before us, Mr. Star Wars. Flying solo today, sir.
Turned on here.
There you are.
There
You're
we
in
go.
business.
Well, thank you very much, President Taylor and Superintendent McNeil. Glad to be here. Hi, Board. How you doing? It's been a while.
Happy, last time you spoke so much before, so remember you
Yeah,
said very little.
yeah, I gotta make up for lost speaking time. Board Policy 5325, as you can see, has just been revised to the point of clarification and a little bit more specific actions with regards to how this impacts our schools and how it relates to community programs outside that want to get involved with our school, mainly in this particular case, our school facilities. So basically what you see here is a streamlined approach. I think what we did initially was probably use too much verbiage with regards to actual athletics within the district. And I think if you look at what's taking place in this, it's kind of taken out a lot of our quote unquote terminology towards our current athletic programs on our campuses and really streamlined it to specifically address non-recognized activities that we offer in the community, but don't necessarily offer as sanctioned sports or sports in Washoe County.
And any changes in here you want to specifically draw our attention to?
You know what? I think one of the things that we really focused on was kind of, again, staying away from what we do with our athletics and separate those two. And I think legal did a real good job of doing that, taking away a lot of references to the NIAA and our goals and guidelines that we have with our athletic programs. Again, these district recognized activities and sports are outstanding sports. We have nothing against them. We think they're great. And a lot of the parents that have their kids involved in some of the examples of programs are lacrosse, we have archery. In some cases, we have different clubs that are changing from clubs to recognized sports because they have faculty members across the district that are deeply involved and committed to these types of programs that we can offer. So this basically opened up the door for a streamlining approach for us to open up our doors and provide opportunities for these programs on our campuses.
Thank you, Mr. Stallworth. I would, I like the distinction because it kind of clarifies, we went through a whole lot, as you recall, with some of the board, some of the club and what they were able to do, not able to do, sanctioned, unsanctioned, and so on. And this really kind of unmuddies the water a little bit, if you will.
Yes, prior to this, it was really cloudy with the whole implementation of clubs, the involvement of our district employees and our coaches who were involved in not only our sanctioned sports, but also some of our club teams and all of that. And so the district was really getting flooded with a lot of requests to use the facilities and those kinds of things, which were what we want as a district is we want our district school students and athletes to use our facilities before school, during school, after school, and this just provides a very distinctive way in which we could recognize those programs and provide them a little bit and easier access to our facilities because it involves the kids at those schools, and in a lot of cases under this policy, some of the leadership and involvement of the teachers, coaches, advisors of these programs are staff members.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nicolette.
I agree with the intent, absolutely, because I guess the 30,000-foot view for me is all our facilities are paid for by tax dollars.
Yeah.
So we must find a way to help organizations and kiddos use the facilities appropriately. I do have a question, just kind of a liability kind of question.
Okay.
On page 2, number 3, district recognized athletics, then going down to B, supervise all student athletes. So that is a reference to the organizers or people who would fill out the permission to have in these activities. that supervision is incumbent upon them and not district staff?
Exactly,
Okay, okay.
exactly. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Anything else? Otherwise, trustee Church?
Yeah, and again, I'm jumping from document to document, so let me try to find back where I want. I believe it's section 7, I believe it's 7. Number A, 7A.
Yes.
Everyone, this at the bottom of page 3.
Yes, bottom of page 3,
Mhm.
page 7A. Can you explain, we obviously want to encourage and support equal access, including people that may have disabilities, but no tryouts or limits. Again, a liability question. If they can't physically do the sport, they still get to play the sport. I'll give you if they're visually impaired and we're playing hardball baseball and they could get hit by a baseball playing shortstop. Can you explain that to me?
Well, in this particular case here, this basically tells us that and provides the opportunity for the advisors to make sure that any kid that wants to come out for this particular activity should have every opportunity to come out. It doesn't necessarily mean they would have to actually participate, because if I was coaching a program where a kid who couldn't see, I wouldn't put him at shortstop. But still I wouldn't stop that kid from having an opportunity to come out and participate in some capacity. As an advisor, I would find something to assist that kid to help him come out and participate in our program.
I mean, that's not how I read it. Maybe legal can weigh in.
I'm not sure weigh in on.
Well,
Yep,
I'm
yep.
reading it's, there shall be no tryouts or limits. I mean, no limits is pretty specific to participation. So, I mean, I'm just trying to walk the dog on this and go, what if they physically can't, but they insist they do?
Well, I'll try to answer
Please,
this
yes.
again here. Again, with the sports that with the current recognized sports that we currently offer in the district here, your specific example has not necessarily come up. But if it had come up, or if it does come up, my hope would be that that liaison that represents the district and the coaches and advisors would do whatever they can to provide an opportunity for this kid, whatever handicap or disability that person may have, to participate and get involved to the fullest of their ability and capability. And we wouldn't just say, no, you can't come out because of your disability.
I'm not comfortable with this. I mean, again, can legal give me some advice on if we're creating liability?
Liability and what? I'm not sure. Can you be a little more specific, trustee Church? I'm trying,
Sure.
I'm trying to walk the dog with you, but
Sure.
I'm not following you very well.
There shall be, and I'm going to cut out a couple words, there shall be no limits to participation. Then it also, there shall be no tryouts, equal access. So again, I think that's as clear as can be, that we can't deny somebody access to play baseball, to play soccer, to swim team, and then if they get hit by a baseball, if they get injured in the soccer, whatever it is. I mean, I could come up probably with dozens of examples. And there's the bottom line is we're saying anybody can play in any sport for any reason, and we can't say no. I see liability there, and I see that it's not practical.
Well, I think you're thinking play, and what I heard from Coach Stallworth, if I may, is participate.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're going to put someone who has no athletic ability whatsoever. They're going to be the catcher on your softball team, because they can easily get hurt, right? That's not what I'm hearing. Is participation may look different based upon what somebody's able to do.
Okay.
So I think we're seeing that a little bit. Remember, I got a sports background, so these are teams. They're trying to win. So it's not a, hey, everybody come on out and you get to play and everybody gets this. It's not little league. It's not, pilot or whatever. But it's, if someone wants to be involved in a team, maybe they have physical abilities. It could be because I have a disability, or maybe I'm not very good at this. Sometimes you just aren't very good.
Well, and their
Right.
participation in this and involvement, not only in these district sanctioned activities, but even in our regular activities and stuff, all of those kids participate based on parent permission and their ability to go ahead and go out for that sport or go out for that activity based on the parents and knowledge of the risk involved and signing off that my kid can participate in these activities.
So there's a parental permission anyway, that if my kid is playing
That's
football, my
tied
kid
in.
might get hurt.
That's
Whether that
tied
kid's
in.
playing or whether that kid is keeping stats on the sidelines.
Yes.
I have so that my kid might get hurt because they could, play could come over and whatever. So there's that might address your liability piece, trustee Church, that there is a piece of every kid that participates that they have parental permission and so on.
Exactly.
I'm going to go to trustee Rodriguez and then we'll go to council. Let's go to council first. So that might shut that down. Council.
Yeah, so with regard to liability, anything we do that's extracurricular can result in liability. We rent our schools to churches on weekends, and if somebody trips and fall, there's an argument that there's liability. So in this instance, this was a specific effort that Mr. Stallworth and I spent a lot of time working together on to address the lacrosse issue that was raised 5 years ago now, 4 years ago now. And we actually invented the idea of the district recognized athletics together. And so there's not going to be football, there's not going to be baseball, there's not going to be volleyball, there's not going to be any sport that can be played on our schools as an NIAA sanctioned sport. These are all non-sanctioned sports. And as a result, the law requires us to permit, though it's a voluntary sport, if you will, for lack of, our district recognized athletic. So the law requires us to open it up to anyone who wants to play. And the law requires us to the best of our ability, make reasonable accommodations for those who do have some type of disability. Now, again, it's reasonable if baseball is not an option, but lacrosse is. If a child can play lacrosse unsighted, then that's great. But if they can't, he or she can't, then maybe find other opportunities for them to participate. And so that's the concept here. And, can I say that there's no liability? Of course not. Anybody can sue anyone for anything, period. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. And I can say that we worked many hours drafting this together, and I'm comfortable with this. And I really like the changes, by the way, so.
Well, I think, and one of the drastic changes that we wanted to focus on in doing this several years ago has been the fact that most of our club programs that have been district-wide in the community are really exclusive. They tend to a specific group, a secret mindset, a section of the community that a lot of times can afford and pay for these things, and a lot of members of our community are excluded from these activities. So we wanted to make sure that our district recognized activities and programs would be open to everyone. One of our best examples, Mr. Church, is our unified sports program that deals with our kids with disabilities statewide. And I tell you what, we have had blind kids play basketball in those programs. We've had kids with wheelchairs play soccer and on the flag football. So again, parents supported that, they wrote off on that, and we participate in those activities based on those activities. So thank you for the question, and I hope it was answered to your satisfaction.
That doesn't mean you don't have a concern, but that's certainly the response. There's no additional liability, which was your question on this. You have further on this particular issue right here?
Yeah,
Trustee Church?
so I mean, there is liability, as council said.
Mhm. I said additional.
Yeah, but however, if we turn to page 4, section E, and I think it's all I, E sub I guess the way it's written. Now, that does alleviate much of my concern. The external organization shall assume all liability, blah, blah, blah. And then it is the parent guardian's responsibility to provide health accident insurance for the student. So that makes me much more comfortable. I had not seen that. I still wouldn't mind putting in what council said about reasonable accommodation under the previous section that I mentioned. But seeing that does alleviate 90% of my concern.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, trustee Church. Anything else on this policy? Anybody, Dr. Nicolette?
I would just extend it a little further and thank you for pointing that out, trustee Church. On page 3, number 7, I find great comfort in the fact that the district provides approval after looking at the charter, bylaws, and other written documents. I mean, to me, there is a process that vets all this, and given the expertise, I think this is solid.
Thank you. And I think legal, because they provide a major leadership role with this as we were going through it. And it took years. This is a document that took 3 to 5 years to get finished. And I like the finished product. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Stallworth. Other comments, concerns about this policy? Do we have any public comment on this, Jeannie?
No public comment.
No public comment on this one? Okay, seeing nothing else. If there are other comments, concerns, we'll take them. Otherwise, looking for a motion, if that's the pleasure of the board. Okay, trustee Rodriguez, a motion by trustee Rodriguez,
Second,
seconded by Dr. Nicolette. Okay, and the motion on the floor is to approve that the board policy committee recommends forward the proposing that the board policy committee forwards the proposed revisions to board policy 5340 as submitted, district sanctioned interscholastic activities to a future meeting of the board of trustees for approval. 53, draw down one, my bad. That the board policy committee forward the proposed revisions to board policy 5325, district recognized athletics, that's right, next one's activities, to a future meeting of the board of trustees for consideration for preliminary approval. Okay, seeing no discussion, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 6-0. And we'll continue on, same, but now we're talking about district sponsored, district sanctioned interscholastic activities as opposed to athletics. Mr. Stallworth?
Again, just streamlining the process in terms of if we have district recognized athletics with the policy, I think we needed to go into a little bit more detail as far as explaining the differences between the district sanctioned athletics and those of district recognized and club activities and so forth. So basically, this is just underlining our relationship and connection with the NIAA and the sanctioned sports that we have on our district, and how sports can be sanctioned in the future by the district and onto the NIAA. So this policy basically just streamlines this process and just basically clarifies when we were doing the district recognized athletics, it was really tough because what we were finding out is that a lot of the athletic activities that were going on were duplicating themselves. We had a baseball team, then we had a baseball club, and then we had a baseball recognized sport and all of those, and we had to streamline those. And that's why we had to come up with the district sanctioned policy just to identify what those sports are and separate them from any district recognized sports that might come to us in the future. And so this has done that. And this provides a lot of the NIAA framework in their paperwork, but realistically, it provides the support that the district has in following the guidelines of the NIAA as we offer sanctioned sports throughout our district to our students.
Thank you, Mr. Stallworth. So what we're talking about here are really those sports, not the activities, but the athletics that are actually sanctioned,
Yes.
as opposed to the ones we just discussed that were those that were recognized, meaning they're outside of the NIAA.
Exactly.
Okay. Anything in here specifically you want to point out to us? That's
Nothing really. It's just, the key part on this aspect is the employee involvement with this, their responsibilities as far as running sanctioned sports, not only the NIAA responsibilities, but specifically our district responsibilities as far as being a coach and advisor of our athletic programs as well. And title, the Title IX aspect and all of that legal went over. This has done a real good job of, again, streamlining this process and identifying those sports and putting those sports kind of under an umbrella so that we not only support them, but provide opportunities for all of our kids to enjoy and the fruits and benefits of playing sports and high school sports in Nevada.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Do we have any public comment on this one? Jeannie, 5340?
No, there's no public comment.
Okay, I'll bring it here to the board for questions or concerns. Otherwise, looking for a motion. Trustee Rodriguez? Oh, so moved.
Yeah, I'll move that we adopt.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to adopt the proposed changes to board policy 5340. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Yes, seconded by trustee Mayberry. We had no public comment, any discussion at this point? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition?
I'll abstain just since I was out of the room for the entire discussion.
Okay, well, wasn't much discussion, so, okay. All right, and I got you, trustee Smith. Thank you. Okay, let the record show that it's passed 5-0-1 with one abstention. Okay, thank you very much, Coach Starwood.
Oh, that's it? I thought I had another.
All right, we have one more. We do. Sorry,
Okay.
5345.
You're tired of me already.
No,
see?
no, see, guys, you've overstayed your welcome, sir.
Okay.
All right, this is a board policy 5345, prevention and treatment of sport-related injuries, specifically to update, formatting, clarify language, and reflect current practice to a future regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for consideration of preliminary approval. And oh, look who's here, Coach Starwood.
Again, here we go with just streamlining the process a little bit and focusing on the specific responsibilities of our coaches and the district with regards to the prevention and treatment of sports-related injuries to these athletes that we just have granted phenomenal opportunities to play sanctioned sports and recognize sports in the district. With that being said, basically this policy just kind of guidelines, provide us guidelines and an overview of our treatment of injuries, what should we do, the do's and don'ts, provide us some direction with regards to protocols for our coaches and our health-related staffs on our campuses, from all the way from our nurses to our assistant coaches, the head coach's responsibilities, our athletic trainers that we have on campus, and any medical professions that are working with our student body and our student athletes. So basically, again, this kind of just goes over the employees' responsibilities. It does use the term coach a lot because sometimes these coaches are not necessarily employees of the district regarding being classroom teachers, but parents and volunteers from the community that come in that have to meet all of the requirements to be a coach in the district. And a lot of those requirements center around being certified in CPR, heat-related issues, health issues, all of those types of things as we go forth and go through these difficult times, such as now we have the COVID intervention that's taking place now with our coaches. So they're being kind of streamlined pretty quickly in terms of the protocols that we're having to use. And you add that with the smoke in the air in the past and the cancellation of practices because of smoke. All of these things are being upgraded as we move through this process of different events taking place worldwide that impact the health and safety of our kids. So this prevention and treatment of sports-related injuries really just kind of talks about the protocols that our coaches, advisors do and have to do to follow up and to manage students that have injuries.
Mhm. Thank you, Mr. Starwood. Dr. Nicolette?
I was going to say former mom. No, I'm still a mom, but former mother of athletes in the district, and had a wonderful time and traveled, and it was so much fun. So I think about the away games when they're out of the district. For
Mhm.
example, I was throughout South Tahoe for soccer. So I noticed that it's not mentioned here, but is it assumed that these same policies and procedures for our coaches and injuries are no matter where our athletes are?
No matter where. No matter where. And usually what happens in these particular cases is that when we go visit someplace or someplace comes here, we are providing either an ATC or a medical profession at those games. And at those visiting sites, they're doing the same thing. So one of the first conversations that you would have as a football coach at Hug for years, I would go to South Tahoe. I would have my athletic trainer here, but I'd also, before the game, my athletic trainer would probably go talk to the athletic trainer at South Tahoe or at whatever site we're at and say, hey, who's your medical profession on your sideline? I want to know who the doctor is. And they just go and introduce themselves, because at some point during that game, there's a chance that they're going to have to meet each other. And I don't want them to meet and greet out there over again. I want them to already know know each other and be prepared to get assistance and help once that takes place. So this prevention and treatment of sports-related injuries is pretty consistent district statewide. I know the NIAA has some requirements in which all schools have to follow. So it's pretty consistent, county by county, district by district.
Thank you, Dr. Nicolette. Mr. Stallworth, other comments, questions? Any public comment? Oh, we'll take public comment for a moment. Trustee Church, and we'll get back to you. Don't lose your spot.
There's no public comment.
Okay, see how fast that was, Trustee Church?
All righty, section C on, I think it's page 3, I get lost here, controlled substances.
That's not
Section-
page 3. Oh, page 2, bottom of page 2.
Page 2, very bottom, 2C,
Okay.
controlled substances. Is there an policy with the, was there any policies that guide us on this? You know, the NIAA or et cetera?
Yes, there is. And I don't know if it should be referred to on this in this particular case, but there are several policies that are out there, especially with NIAA, as far as drug use and substance abuse use and the penalties and consequences of those actions. Yes.
It's referred to, Trustee Church, in the bottom, under legal requirements and associated documents, the NIA on the very bottom, page 5.
Oh, 5. Okay.
Number 2. It complies with, you said, are there other things that guide us? It's a list there of those other things that guide us.
Do those apply to controlled substances?
Yes, they will specifically have a section on controlled substances in those documents.
Can you tell me ballpark what the policy is? For example, a coach thinks a kid is high on drugs. What do you do?
Okay, a coach thinks the kid is high on drugs. Number one is they'd have contact with the parent. They would contact the school nurse and have that conversation here. The penalty, is that what you want to know, what the penalty is? Or do you want to know what the course of action would be with that coach at that particular time?
Course of action at that particular time.
Okay, well, number one is I'm going to take the easy route and say, let's find out that the kid has been caught using marijuana at lunch. He's on my team. First offense is we contact the parents, we notify them, and the first offense is a 9-week suspension from play. Actually, it's a 6-week suspension from play. The kid could take 3 of those weeks off if they go to a drug and alcohol class. If they go to those 3 classes, then they can waive 3 of those weeks, and within 3 weeks, they could return back to play.
If I can jump in, this might be where you're going, Trustee Church. So are our coaches trained in that? Is that where you're going? Like how the coaches know what to do, or am I making something up?
No, I was more concerned with, is there a policy? And it sounds like there's a pretty
Okay.
stringent
Yeah.
policy already there. And I assume it is either in the NIAA rules or that the superintendent has regulations. So it sounds like it's handled, I think.
Okay, I thought you were
Yes.
going someplace else, but
Okay.
I'm with you. It's like, where do they find them? And that's,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
So that would be the steps that we would take with that. And there's 3 phases with that as we go through that. And that's alcohol, drugs, and parents don't necessarily like this, but our policy treats cigarettes the same as it treats marijuana. There's no difference. So, some parents come in and say, hey, why are you treating my kid so bad? He just smoked a cigarette. He's 14. And we say, well, there's no difference between a cigarette and a joint. So
Mm.
the policy is the same.
Yeah.
Just like the policy is the same with a beer or whiskey. It's the
Right.
same.
Okay. That takes care of that question, trustee Chair. Do you have more? Okay. Seeing that we have no more questions, and we already said there was no public comment on this. Right, that's right. We did that before trustee Church. Looking for a motion, if that's the pleasure of the board.
So move.
Okay. Trustee Rodriguez moves board policy 5345 as submitted.
I'll second.
See you like there, trustee Mayberry. There's a second. Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, opposition. All right, the motion carries 6-0. Now you are good.
Thank you very much.
Good
Vito.
start.
Appreciate you.
And thank you for your service. He's the president of NIAA, y'all. So thank you for your service, and that does a great job.
Thank you.
All right, board policy 207. This is, agenda item 207, board policy 5350. I know, right? Sorry, I got a lot of sleep last night too. That's probably the problem is I had so much sleep. Discussion and possible action to recommend revisions to and/or forward the proposed revisions of board policy 5350. This is student advisory council and student leadership, specifically to update formatting, clarify language. This is move it to forward to a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for consideration of preliminary approval. And Dr. Davidson and Mr. Ernst, they're before us again. Who am I turning it over to? Dr. Davidson?
Yep, for the
welcome.
record, Laura Davidson, Director of Research and Evaluation. So this is policy 5350, and its intent is to define the structure of the Student Advisory Council, including our student representative who sits on the Board of Trustees. So again, we don't have huge changes to this policy, largely formatting. The only ones that we might draw your attention to are we're in the purpose under that final edit there. We're cautious around the term student government and student leadership in general, because for many students that means that's kind of an exclusionary practice, right? That only students who sit on student governance at a school are allowed to be on student advisory council or participate in any types of student voice activities that we have in the district. So we want to remove those terms just so that all students feel like they can be student leaders, which I think is really the intent of our student voice initiatives. And then just in 3C, this is a very minor change, just that the principal can delegate selection of a student to the Student Advisory Council instead of, requiring that the principal is the one who selects the student. So again, our Student Advisory Council is a group of amazing students that come from all of our high schools, as well as some of our middle schools. We ask all of our principals to send us a list of between 1 to 5 students, and then we contact them personally and invite them to sit on the Student Advisory Council. But that's not the only way that we recruit students for the Student Advisory Council. We also, if we host meetings or we have very outspoken students, or a counselor says, hey, I've got this incredible student who I think would love to sit on this group, then we certainly open our doors to welcome those students onto the board. But this just defines a little bit of the structure about, at a minimum, we want at least 2 students from every high school selected by the principal or someone that they delegate the project to.
Okay, thank you very much. If you haven't been to a student advisory council meeting, they're cool, they're energizing. You hear some great ideas, and we get a chance to benefit from their president here at our board meetings, but just a great group of students. Okay, why don't we start with some public comment? Do you have a public comment card? Okay.
John Eppolito.
Mr. Eppolito, welcome back, sir.
My name is John Eppolito. I'm a former K-12 teacher. I taught a private elementary school for 1 year, and then I taught 5 years middle and high school, public school. And I've had kids in the school continuously since 2003. 3 of my kids have been involved in leadership. I've seen a big change since 2003. I've seen more in trying to influence children's ideas, attitudes, and beliefs, and less educating children. And my belief is that by the time they get to high school, part of the reason they're little activists little social activists is because of what the school's been doing to these kids since kindergarten. Again, Focus on educating children. Forget the indoctrination, forget the ideas, attitudes, and beliefs. That belongs to the parents, not you guys. Math, English, social studies, science, technology, leave the rest to the parents.
Thank you, Mr. Ippolito.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other public comment, Jeannie? Okay, thank you very much. We bring it back here to the board. Questions, comments, or working towards a motion? Trustee Church?
Sorry to be the only one.
Okay.
Section 2, A, I think it's 2A, the board shall annually appoint a student to sit as a non-voting ex officio member of the board. Can you explain how that is selected? Does the superintendent just give us a name? Do we each get to put in a name? How do we do that?
If you go to B, I think it's there. The reason why I say this is because that same thing caught me. I thought the same thing. It's like, we don't appoint, but then B says the representative of the board, it describes who that is. So there isn't really a process that says how we do it, because we don't really say, this is who we want. It's the person who's the chair. And that's the only reason I can respond like that, is because it was on my list until I went there. Oh, shoot, there it is.
Oh, okay, so whoever's selected as the student representative chair of the advisory council automatically,
Is the student.
so we
trustee.
really don't, so the board doesn't really appoint. It's kind of an oxymoron, but I get it.
Well, it's a nice formality, I think for the student. That's how I, again, that same thing caught me, and I'm like, wait a minute, we don't do that. But it's like, oh, okay, but it's nice. Hey, this person was appointed by the board. I think it's a nice kind of formality for the student. At least that's my 2 cents. So it didn't bother me from that. Anything else, Trustee
Yeah,
Church?
so moving
Uh-huh.
on,
Are you good there?
I'm good on that.
All right.
It's kind of, but it is what it is. Moving on to, and I think it's it's hard to read these, IB3, but I'll read it.
Any page you can help us, we can help
Let's
find it.
see. I think it would be page 3. Triple I.
Does it start
So
with
it's
attend
towards
all?
the top of page 3.
Does it start with attend all?
Yes, attend
Okay.
all public portions of regular meetings. So we really don't want them to attend all public portions if they're after midnight, if it means missing school. I'm just thinking maybe as a couple words as practical or something like that. And then kind of on the same topic is all kind of together. Then I have one other that's not. Fully participate in all discussions. We've never had a problem.
Are you moving down on that same? in
Yes,
that
to
same
the
area?
next one, it says be prepared to fully participate in all discussions.
Mhm.
Do we want to limit their ability to participate? I mean, you know me, I can pontificate. So if we get a student person, can we limit that? It's probably not, it's a very minor thing. I don't see it being an issue, but I just want to raise that. But mainly the concern that they don't, that we don't require them to attend all public portions of regular meetings if they go late or if they interfere with schools.
You have a recommendation for change, sir?
I'd say maybe 2 words, as practical.
Feedback, comments? I mean, we don't, it isn't, it begins with the student, if we go up to 2B at the bottom of page 2, it says the student representative to the board shall, and so that is saying they're being directed to. And we certainly, I mean, there are times when we say, nope, you go home, it's late, or if it's during school and so on. So I think some, I don't know, some softening in some way, because we don't really want them to attend every single, right? I mean, I think there's something to that. I don't know a better way to say that. Do we start at the beginning? Do we start up at 2B and make that change there? Or do we really target it towards subsection little I?
I agree, maybe at the top. I'll make a quick motion.
Well, hang on, that's not what I was asking, because the rest of it, we may want to be that way. You see, if we change it at the top, then all of it is kind of soft. And so that's, we need some consideration, and I don't think we want all of it to be soft.
If I can just add, I think most students should be able to determine when they need to leave a regular meeting. I wouldn't want the board to determine when the student should leave because, that could diminish some of their equal footing on the board of trustees. So if I could maybe suggest, if we wanted to add something to that effect, some language in 2, 3, let's see, 2 I on page 3 around attend all public portions of regular meetings as determined by the student, something like that.
I agree, we do have to do something a little because it's also before, if we start a meeting at 2 and they have a test at
Mhm.
1:45.
Mhm.
So,
No, I think I think it's a good point that trustee Church brought up. I do, yeah. I told you before, you make good points. I think it's a good point. I don't think we want the whole thing to be soft. I think somewhere in there, I don't know if it as practical, I don't know the best way to say that, but I think there should be some softening in there somewhere. Do we want to say as determined by the student? I don't know if we want it to be that loose, do we?
my
Oh.
thought was, without compromising their education. I mean, really, if you're sick, those are all kind of different things, or if you had to zoom in, you could do that, but at all costs, we have to ensure that our intent is clear, that sitting at the table is an honor, and we welcome and need student voice, but should never compromise your education.
Maybe if we take out the word all.
I still think it's practical or as reasonable is pretty good. Because all means if you attend the meeting, then you expect it to stay till the end.
Right, that's why I said if we take out all.
You have public portions.
I mean, but it could be as reasonable. I mean, it's just whatever the pleasure of the board is. Trustee Rodriguez?
I know I've only been here like 6, 7 months, but I haven't seen an issue involving our student trustee as far as whether travel, dismissing me in early or coming in. I mean, we started 2 and she comes in when she's done. I mean, has there really been an issue that we need to put something or change this?
Well, it's not because there's been an issue. I think we just want this to accurately reflect what we intend. And I agree with trustee Church that we don't intend for them to attend all public portions. I mean, just as if it can be reflected a little bit more accurately, I think that's not because there's a problem, but that way it's really clear. So you don't get someone's like, I got to attend all the, no, actually you don't. We want you to go to school, or if it's getting too late, like some of the meetings we've had in the past, I think that's the point we'll make, that if we can do a minor adjustment to make it work, whatever that might be.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, let me go motion, then we can come back here for discussion. Yes, trustee Church.
That section 2 III be amended to state as practical.
Can you read the whole thing so we can follow you? All, start with attend all.
Will be amended as follows.
Oh, thank you. I'm
As
sorry.
practical, comma, attend all public portions of regular meetings of the Board of Trustees and serve in a non-voting capacity, period. So in other words,
And the remainder of whatever,
Yes.
yada, yada.
so simply adding the words as practical, comma.
As practical, comma. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to add as practical at the beginning of that. Is there a second? Okay, I see trustee Mayberry doing this. I'll take that as a second, sir.
I will second.
All right, there is a second that subsection, the section 2 subsection, little I3. I'm sure there's a really official way to say that, but that's what we're going with. Be amended to read as practical. Attend all public portions of regular meetings of the board and serve in a non-voting capacity, with the remainder of that section being included as well. Further discussion on that? Okay, we had some public comment. Is it related to this? Okay, why don't we
Yes.
hear that before we vote? I'm sorry.
John Eppolito.
Is it on? Oh, yeah, we did this one already. We did. Thank
Oh, I
you.
did?
Yep.
Oh,
That
sorry.
Is that for the end? Oh, that's where we're done. Okay, great. All right. All right, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? The motion carries. Record shows is 6-0. All right, anything else on this agenda item that we need to, trustee Church, you have something else?
Yep, one more.
All right,
Section 5 under that same area, I think it's page 3. V or 5, maintain confidentiality. Kind of like to discuss that maybe a little bit. do we need a section in there about parental consent? Or do we need a section about parental consent at the beginning if they're going to serve on the board? And the only reason I thought about it, it came up in a previous discussion about another matter that we had, that if the child, the minor, is held to confidentiality and they violate that, the parents, there could be some liability. So do we want to add parental consent somewhere in here?
I'll just add quickly, we always do obtain parental consent just as good policy, and we always contact them by phone and collect written consent. But you're right, it's not in the policy, but that's just good practice that we do for all student voice initiatives.
Is that included in, if I may, is that included in their service as as the chair of the Student Advisory Council?
Just for that position, right?
So would that cover, because this is in the role as chair?
It makes sense to me. Yeah.
Not comfortable with that. I don't see any reason why we just don't put in with parental consent.
Okay, where would you suggest that? I do think parental consent is important. I don't, if it's covered in that, then I'd be okay, but if it leaves it too loose, I'm okay with that too. Where's your recommendation for that, Trustee Church?
That's a good question, because it's, I looked, it's not covered anywhere in here. So I know you like to have an answer, but
I
part
do.
part of me says maybe it should be at the beginning, because with parental consent, they serve on the, our board, et cetera, et cetera. So I might ask for some discussion. At a bare minimum, it would be under 5, section 5, which I'm having a hard time finding now.
It's okay. It's right there towards the bottom of page 3. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Taylor. So there may be a way to do this under, on page 4, under A, B,
Oh, I see
where
it.
it says specific council operating procedures shall be established through the Student Advisory Council. And then those procedures shall include. So you could add a procedure,
Mhm.
a statement such as there. And I would just make sure that we add the word guardianship to
Yeah.
parent.
Mhm. So then it could be included, if I may, then, and see if this takes care of your, I think it does, Trustee Church. It can be included under that section 3 C, and it would be little 5 at the bottom, or wherever it might flow a little bit better earlier. It seems like it would be for you to start getting the meeting and so on, when you start saying eligibility and members, but nonetheless, it can be included in that area. Obtain the consent of parent or guardian.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe make it number I and then move everything else down, and
Yeah, we can let them write it. We don't have to write it, right? It'll show up in here. We don't have to say, we don't,
you don't need a motion?
well, we do need a motion, but we don't need 6 of us to say it should go exactly here. We can say included in that section. And then when it comes back, we'll make, just needs to be included. That way they make sure the flow is right. Otherwise we get 6 people that, well, it should be I. Nope, it should be double I. Or maybe it should be V. As long
Okay.
as it's in here, which is the important, and that is important, it's an important piece, and it is an important, that would be my recommendation instead of us trying to decide.
Do you want me to try a motion? Or I think you've got a
It
better.
is your idea, so I think you should, sir.
All righty, then I would make a motion under section 3 C that staff be directed to add a section that requires parental or guardian consent.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor that a section, a part to obtain parental or guardian consent be included in this policy.
Second.
Okay, there's a second. Further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Oh,
Aye.
one sec.
Wait, hold on. Yes. Trustee Smith,
Thank
we
you.
know she's paying attention. She's right there involved. No, go ahead.
So I do want to clarify. So with the consent, it means that if a parent does not want their child to participate in the council activities, then they simply wouldn't be able to, even if those activities were happening during the school day or had no bearing after the fact. I just want to be clear about that I'm understanding that correctly.
This would just be for the board representative that the student, that we have parental consent, especially given the length of the meetings and the additional requirements of that position.
Okay, and I remembered that portion of the conversation. I just wasn't sure if the consent was specifically to that. So thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Nope, that's, wait, hang on, legal's weighing in.
That's not the motion. That's not the motion. The motion is for the whole policy, at least where you've instructed that it be placed.
Okay,
So
Because
So I'll
I'm
go
not
to-
in favor of that.
go ahead.
if
Counselor.
you want it to be only related to the person who is a trustee,
Student
ex
trustee.
officio, student trustee, thank you.
Mhm.
You would need to place it in 2B. You need to
Oh.
place it under 2 somewhere.
Yeah,
student
it's 2B.
representative To the board.
It's 2B, student representative to the board is
Yeah.
what that would be.
Yeah. So
Okay,
you need to place it in 2 somewhere.
Okay, you're the motioner, trustee Church. What's your intention?
I'd like to amend my motion.
And, okay, please.
So the motion would be amended and or I'll start de novo. That we amend, and I'm trying to find it.
Just say that you place it at a different place. Is that your
That we
intention?
place it at the beginning to
B.
be 2B, the
Mhm.
exact same motion.
Okay, the seconder on that, trustee Mayberry, you're the seconder. You're okay with that? Oh, I'm sorry, trustee, you were, that's the other motion. Trustee
mhm.
Rodriguez? Okay, so then let me reframe, okay, because this is an important clarification that that staff be directed to add something that requires that the student trustee obtain parent or guardian permission to serve in that capacity. You're nodding, trustee Church, trustee Rodriguez. Okay, that answer your question, trustee Smith?
Yes, it does. I am supportive of that the way that it is. I was not supportive of where it was going originally. So I'm good. Thank you.
No, the clarity is good. So thank you. So that works. Okay, everybody good? Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposition? Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Aye. Opposition? All right, the motion carries 6-0. Okay, so we've made a couple of changes. Any other changes on this before we ask to see if the board would like to approve the entire policy as changed? Yes, council?
So I think I need to weigh in on the question related to 2 and the appointment of the representative to the board.
Mhm.
2A and 2B do not read as described. What it contemplates is that the board appoints the person and then the person is the chair of the Student Advisory Council because the board has appointed him. So if you read it, it reads first, and you have to read these in order. The board shall annually appoint somebody. So I appoint Joe Ernst. At that point, Joe Ernst has now become the Student Advisory Council chair because the next sentence says the student representative to the board, which you just appointed Joe Ernst, during his term shall serve as the chair of the Student Advisory
It does
Council.
read that way.
If you don't want it to be that way, which I believe you don't, and I don't think we do that in operation, we should rework that. And so do we appoint, I presume that the Student Advisory Council appoints their chair and then their chair. So my recommendation would be, because that's what I was contemplating is, well, I don't recommend just switching them. I think you need to change A to say the board shall annually appoint a student, comma, who is the student representative, or who is the chairperson of the Student Advisory Council, comma, to sit as a non-voting ex officio member of the Board of Trustees for 1-year term, with a new follow-up sentence that says the Student Advisory Council shall select its own chairperson. That would make it clearer, because the way it's written right now,
Mhm.
it doesn't say what.
No, you're right. It's just not what we do. It says something, one drives, it's driving the other way. Okay, and let's have some conversation about that. It sounds like council's kind of directed, one, what's in practice. And then probably even more importantly is what is the intention? And I don't think the board's intention is to dictate to the Student Advisory Council who their chair will be. Trustee Church?
And just a thought, it just popped into my head, so it may not go anywhere. What if they are, I'm just what ifs again, what if they are not showing up? What if they're disruptive? what if they're just not a good fit? Would the board have any authority to say, no, we don't want you, you know, we appreciate your service, but time to move on?
As
It's the superintendent student advisory.
it's the, oh, go ahead. That's a good point. Go ahead, Dr. McNeil.
Well, I'm just, I mean, this is all in the area of hypotheticals. So, I mean, it's the superintendent's advisory council. So I would imagine that, a trustee, the board president would probably come to the superintendent and say, hey, we have a problem. We need to, fix it.
Mhm. And then because it's your council, then deal accordingly. Okay. We've had great membership. So it's like, I mean, I think it's a good question because but since I've been on the board, we've had really great students be involved. So. Okay, so what we're looking at is making the change as recommended by council. Basically what I would look for a motion is to say that the policy be changed to reflect the intention that the student advisory council selects their chair, and then that chair becomes a student trustee. And we don't get into semantics and wording and A and little I and B. We let staff do all of that. But that piece is captured. Since it's already here, it's just an amendment, so it isn't a substantive change that needs to go back to staff. So that would be my recommendation for a motion. We do something along those lines instead of getting really detailed.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nicolette.
I motion that the policy be changed to reflect that the Student Advisory Council selects their own chair.
And
Oh,
And
that chair becomes.
And that chair becomes the representative for the Board of Trustees.
that's how it is now. Right?
Yes,
That's-
that's the practice, but that's outside of the way the policy is written.
Okay.
So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Mayberry. The motion was by Dr. Nicolette. Everybody clear on that? Great catch, council. This is part of why we review these on the calendar so we can catch things like that. Okay, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? The motion carries. Let the record show it is unanimous. Thank you. That's a good catch. All right, now we're looking for a motion to approve the entire board policy 5350 as amended today.
So moved.
Okay, we got, okay, I saw some people leaning in fingers down here. So thank you. Was that you, trustee Rodriguez? Trustee Rodriguez, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by trustee Church. So the motion is to approve board policy 5350 as amended today and to forward it onto a future regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for consideration of preliminary approval. Okay, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? All right, the motion is carried. Let the record show it is unanimous. Okay, so we looked at 5 policies today and that will all go forward to a future meeting of the Board of Trustees. Thank you so much, staff. Mr. Ernst and Dr. Davidson, we appreciate you. Thank you. All right, good conversation, good questions, everybody. All right, now we're going on to, looks like we're on public comment. Jeannie, I know we have, Mr. Eppolito had turned a card in, you said?
There's a couple. John
Oh, couple?
Eppolito.
Okay. Mr. Eppolito, welcome back.
My name is John Eppolito. I wanted to talk for a minute about the articles that I emailed the board and I sent in for public record. Here's another copy of each article just in case. And this is in regards to Naviance. A couple of years ago, this board approved Naviance. It's some kind of counseling high school thing that's supposed to kids to enter all this data, and this vendor is supposed to be able to help kids choose what colleges might be good for them. Incline High School is the only school in the district that uses it because a few parents thought it would be a good idea. So they said, we'll pay for it. It's quite expensive. They said, we'll pay for it. They came down here and you guys approved it against Protect Nevada Children's and a couple other parents' wishes. We were stuck with it. Since then, Naviance has been sold to Power School. The district did not tell parents that the children's data was sold to Power School. Since then, Power School was sold to Vista Equity Partners. And this is the article that kind of brought it all to a head. I don't think you guys should be approving this stuff just for one school, just because a few people have money and say, we'll pay for it. This article is titled, "This private equity firm is amassing companies that collect data on America's children." Vista Equity Partners. And then I probably won't have time to read too much from here, but this should have become apparent when the Chinese bought Edmodo. Most of you weren't here, and most of the board members weren't here to approve that. President Taylor and Superintendent McNeil were here. When the Chinese bought Edmodo, that should have been a red flag for all of us. Edmodo was probably, of the free education vendors, that was the richest student data profile in the world, Edmodo. It had a social media aspect and it had all the education. So not only were the kids doing their schoolwork in Edmodo, they also were doing social media in Edmodo. The Chinese bought it. So what's to stop Vista Equity Partners from buying Infinite Campus? Nothing. They could buy Infinite Campus. And you know, I can't do this alone. I need you guys to start speaking up. Here's another article this month. There's also some, well, I'll just read you the sentence. Found a university that deliberately advertised only to white students through Naviance. Maybe you'd have a little problem with that, President Taylor. I don't know. You approved it. You probably didn't know at the time. We tried to warn you because Naviance is very controversial all over the country. Please get it out. Actually, I ran out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Eppolito.
You're welcome.
You said we have more public comment. Oh, that's okay. All right. That's okay.
Mike Krogan.
Krogan. Welcome, Mr. Krogan. We making sure we have him on there. Okay. Okay.
I'm on, right?
Yes, you are, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Krogan. I'm a resident of Nevada, Reno, and a member of the public. I guess I'm responding to an earlier comment. I welcome the board representing and protecting classroom teachers who do put on their hats occasionally and answer questions from students as grown-ups, as adults. Sometimes students ask questions of adults and grown-ups away from their families about what goes on in the world. And so the teachers respond as best they can from what they know of their life experience. That enriches a student's experience at school, in addition to math, English, science, and so on. I would even go on to suggest that perhaps in doing that, teachers under your direction will help students grow up and be social activists and appear in front of future boards of education to advocate for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krogan. We have other public comments, Jeannie?
The board received email public comments from Deborah Luddy and Joe Morabito.
Thank you very much. Okay, that covers our policy committee meeting for this month. Thank you, everybody. Our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 15th. We are adjourned.